Grüezi. Welcome back. We're now on to chapter 14 of The Fairy Caravan by Beatrix Potter. Upon fine days in spring, the parrot's cage was set out of doors upon the top of the garden wall, opposite the farmhouse windows. In the intervals of biting its perch and swinging wrong side up, the parrot addressed remarks to the poultry in the yard below. The words which it uttered most frequently in the hearing of those innocent birds were "Demera sugar, Demera sug, dem, pretty Polly." The chickens listened attentively. When the chickens were feathered, they were taken to live in a wooden hut on wheels in the stubble field. They picked up the scattered grain and grew into fine fat pullets. In autumn, the farmer talked of taking the hen hut home, but he was busy with other work. He delayed till winter. In the night before Christmas Eve, there came a fall of snow. When Tapitori looked out next morning, the ground was white. She drew back into the hut in consternation. Then Selina Pickercorn and Chucky Doody looked out. None of them had ever seen snow before. They were April-hatched pullets without a single experienced old hen to advise them. "Is it a tablecloth?" asked Chucky Doody. They knew all about tablecloths, because they had been reared under a hen coop on the drying green. They had been scolded for leaving dirty footmarks on a clean tablecloth which was bleaching upon the grass. The hens slid nervously down the hen ladder onto the snow. "No, it was not a tablecloth," said Tapitori. "I'll tell you what, I do believe it is the parrot's Demera sugar." Now, the parrot ought to have told them that Demera sugar is not white. Selina Pickercorn tasted a beakful. "It is nothing extra special nice. He need not have talked so much about it. How horrible cold and wet it feels." Just then the farmer came into the field with a horse and cart. He drove the hens back into the hut, fastened the door with a peg, and tied the hut behind his cart with a rope in order to drag it homewards through the snow. The hen hut did not run smoothly. It had a tiresome little waggling wheel at one end that caught in ruts. It bumped along, and the pullets inside it cackled and fluttered. Before the procession had got clear of the field, the hut door flew open. Out bounced Tapitori, Chucky Doody, Selina Pickercorn, and 5 other hens. The farmer and his dog caught 5 of them, none too gently, but the 3 first-named birds flew back screaming to the spot where the hen hut had stood originally, before it had been removed. The farmer was obliged to leave them for the present. Tapitori, Chucky Doody, and Selina wandered around in the snow. The field seemed very large and lost under its white covering. "The hut is gone," said Tapitori, with a brainwave. "That is so," agreed Selina Pickercorn. "We fell out of a hut." "What shall we do?" asked Chucky Doody. "I see nothing for it but a Christmas picnic," said Tapitori. "Here's sugar in plenty, but where's the tea and the butter and bread?" Large flakes of snow commenced to fall. "Perhaps this is the bread and butter coming," said Tapitori, looking up hopefully at the darkening sky. "My feather petticoat is getting so wet," grumbled Chucky Doody. "Let us try to walk along the top of that wall towards the wood." The wall had a thick white topping of snow. It proved to be a most uncomfortable walk, with frequent tumblings off. They crossed Wilfin Beck on a wooden rail. Water-below ran dark and sullen between the white banks. By the time they had reached the wood, it was dusk. For the last 100 yards the hens had been floundering through snowdrifts. "If this is a Christmas picnic, it is horrid. Let us get up into that spruce tree and roost there till morning." They managed to fly up. They perched in a row on a branch, fluffing out their feathers to warm from their cold feet. They were 1 speckled hen and 2 white hens, only the white hen looked quite yellow against the whiter snow. Picnic is long time commencing, said the speckled hen, Tapitory. It was soon black as pitch amongst the spreading branches of the spruce. Down below in the glen, the waters of the stream tinkled through the ground ice. Now and then there was a soft rushing sound, as the wet snow slipped off the sapling trees and bent beneath its weight, and sprang upwards again, released. Far off in the woods, a branch snapped under its load. The sound of a gun at night. The stream murmured, flowing darkly. Dead caches, withered grass, and canes stood up through the snow on its banks under a fringe of hazel bushes. Between the stream and the tree where the hens were roosting, there was a white, untrodden slope. Only one tree grew there, a very small spruce, a little Christmas tree some 4 foot high. As the night grew darker, the branches of this little tree became all tipped with light and wreathed with icicles and chains of frost. Brighter and brighter it shone, until it seemed to bear 100 fairy lights, not like the yellow gleam of candles, but the clear white incandescent light. Small voices and music began to mingle with the sound of the water. Up by the snowy banks from the wood and from the meadow beyond tripped scores of little shadow creatures, advancing from the darkness into the light. They trod a circle on the snow round the Christmas tree, dancing gaily hand in hand. Rabbits, moles, squirrels, and wood mice, even the half-blind mole, old Samson Velvet, danced hand in paw with a wood mouse and a shrew, whilst a hedgehog played the bagpipes beneath the fairy spruce. Tapitory and her sisters craned forward on their branch. Is the Christmas picnic commencing? May we fly down and share it? Shall we, to join the dance? They slid and sidled forward, shaking down a shower of melting snow and ice. Cluck, cluck, cackled the hens as they clutched and fluttered amongst slippery boughs. The light of Christmas tree quivered and went out. All was darkness and silence. I am afraid the Christmas picnic was only a dream. We shall have to roost here till morning. Hush, sit still, said Tapitory. It was not us that frightened them away. Something is stirring near the stream. What is it? The moon shone out between the clouds, throwing long shadows on the snow, shadows of the hazels and tall caches. A little figure, questing and snuffling, came out into the moonlight. A small brown figure in a buttoned-up long coat. He examined the footsteps on the snow round the Christmas tree. Then, horrible to relate, he came straight up the snowy slope and stood under the spruce, looking up at the hens. He was a disagreeable, fusky, musky person called John Stoat Ferret. At this point, Charles thought it necessary to apologise to Jenny Ferret, who was knitting on the canvas steps. She accepted the apology in good part, and said of course she was not answerable for disagreeable relations. A horrid, fusky, musky, smelly relation with short legs and a rather bushy tail. First he tried to climb a tree, but he could not do so. Then he cried, "Shoo, shoo," and threw sticks at the hens, and then he buttoned up against the tree and tried to shake them down. They clung, cackling and terrified in the browse high above. Then John Stoat Ferret thought of another plan. He determined to make them dizzy. He set to work. He danced. It was not at all nice dancing. At first he circled slowly, very, very slowly, and gradually faster, 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 until he was spinning like a top. And always a nasty, fusky, musky smell steamed upwards into the tree. Tapitory, Chucky Doody, and Selina Pickercorn overhead watched him. They had left off clucking. They watched him in fascinated, terrified silence, craning over their branch. And still he spun round and round and round. The fusky smell rose up into the spruce. Tapitory twisted her head round, following his movements as he danced, and Chucky Doody twisted her neck round, and Selina Pickercorn not only twisted her head, she began to turn round herself upon the branch. All the hens were growing giddy. John Stoat Ferret danced and spun more furiously. The fusky, musky smell rose higher. All three hens commenced to turn round dizzily. In another minute they would fall off. John Stoat Ferret capered and twirled, but all of a sudden he stopped. He sat up, motionless, listening. Voices were approaching up the cart road that skirts the wood. Upon Christmas Eve, it is a pleasant custom amongst the big folk for carol singers to go singing from farm to farm, even to the lonely cottages on the outskirts of the great wood. Two small boys, who had been out with the carolers, were going home to supper. Their Christmas picnic had been more prosperous than poor Tappy Tory's. Their pockets were full of apples and toffee and pennies. "George," said Jimmy, "give us a ginger snap." "Nuh-uh," said George, "it will gummy your teeth together, that you cannot sing." "Whoop," shouted George, jumping into a snowdrift. "Sing another." Wassail to our town, the bowl is white and the ale is brown. The bowl is made of rosemead tree, and so is the ale of good barley. Little maid, turn the pin, and open the door, and come let us in. John Stoat Ferret listened intently. "Whoop," shouted Jimmy, kicking the snow about, swinging his candle lantern. "Sing another one." "Here us comes a wassailing under the holly green. Here us comes a wassailing, merry to be seen. Good luck, good Master Hodgkin, and kind Mistress also, and all the little childer that round the table go. Your pockets full of money, your cupboards of good cheer. A merry Christmas, gizzards, and a happy New Year." "Jimmy," exclaimed George suddenly, "I smell stoat. Look over the wall with a lantern." John Stoat Ferret departed hurriedly, and as if a spell were broken, Chucky Doody, Tappy Tory, and Selina found their voices. They cackled loudly up in a tree. "Eh, see there," said George. "Them's our three hens that father lost out into hen hut. Fetch 'em down. I's hold lantern." "Swalls gaily slape," giggled Jimmy, bouncing himself on the slippery top-stones. He reached up into the tree and got hold of Tappy Tory first by the legs. "Catch," said he, and flung her out into the snowdrift in the lane. "Here's another fat un." He threw Chucky Doody across. Lena flew after them of her own accord. The boys picked the hens out of the snow and trudged homewards, George with a hen tucked under each arm, and Jimmy with one hen and a candle lantern. It was an inglorious ending to Tappy Tory's Christmas picnic, but at one time it looked like ending much worse. "Very much worse. Cluck, cluck, cluck," said Charles the cock. Sandy looked thoughtful. "Was the parrot an elderly bird?" "Very aged, by his own account, if truthful," replied Charles. "I wonder whether he was the same parrot who had an adventure with a hawk long ago. The parrot which I am referring to belonged to Squire Brown of Cumberland. The squire also had a chestnut cob on which he went out riding, and employed an old groom gardener named John Geddes. When Squire Brown came downstairs on fine mornings, he called through the open staircase window to John Geddes in the stable yard. He said, 'I'm riding today, John Geddes.' Then he scratched the parrot's head, and read the newspaper, and had breakfast. Now the parrot was so tame that he was allowed to come out of his cage, and one day he was waddling down the lane when, shocking to say, a large hawk swooped down from the sky and seized poor Polly in its claws. Then the hawk rose into the air over the house and stable yard, and the parrot, looking down from the last time at its home, saw the old groom gardener sweeping with the yard broom. 'I'm riding today, John Geddes,' shouted Polly, whereupon the hawk was so startled that it let go the parrot, who skimmed downwards from the clouds to safety." "Cluck, cluck, cluck. I think I've heard that anecdote before," said Charles. "Possibly," replied Sandy, bristling up his moustache. "Possibly, but Squire Brown's parrot was the first one it happened to." Zarifra intervened hastily in the cause of peace. "Was it not Miss Brown, a very, very old lady, who told us the story?" "It was," said Sandy, eyeing Charles the cock. "And did she not tell us other pretty stories?" continued Zarifra. "The story of the fairy clogs, and that pretty tale with the water lilies. How they went adrift and sailed away along the lake and down the river, in each water lily flower was a fairy sitting with golden curls in the white lily flowers, and a fairy in green on each broad round leaf, rowing with oars made of rushes. What was the end of the story, Zarifra? Asked Tuppenny. Unfortunately, I do not remember. I don't think it had any end, or else I fell asleep. Danke. Thank you for coming today. Hopefully we'll get the next chapter out next week. See you then. Auf Wiedersehen.